Kindly stand for anthems, please. Thank you. His Excellency, the Vice President of the Republic of Gambia, His Excellency, the Chief Justice of the Republic of the Gambia, Honorable Chief Justices of ECOWAS, Honorable Ministers of State, Ministers of Justice of ECOWAS, Attorney and Deputy Attorney, His Excellency, the ECOWAS Commission President, represented here by Permanent Resident Ambassador, Right Honorable Speaker of ECOWAS Parliament, the President, ECOWAS Court of Justice, the ECOWAS institutions, the President UMOA Court of Justice, the Vice President, Community Court of Justice, and honorable judges of the court, Honorable Judge from East Africa Court of Justice, Madam Chairman, African Commission, People's Rights and Human, President of West Africa Bar Associations, the President of Africa Bar Association, Head of ECOWAS National Units, distinguished judges of Supreme Court, members of the judiciary, professors, special guests, the guest speaker, international partners of the court, the chief registrar, director, staff members, member of the press, ladies and gentlemen. Zero tolerance for unconstitutional change of government. Why the topic for meditation or reflection? To answer this question and give approaches, the Community Court of Justice, with the strong support of His Excellency Adama Barrow, President of the Gambia, is organizing this international conference you have all accepted to witness. Thank you. But another authority above me, we take the floor to thank you all, and I invite the Honorable President of the Court, Honorable Justice Edward Amoako Asante, to take the floor for the welcome address.
Thank you very much. Your Excellency, the Vice President of the People's Republic of Gambia, His Excellency, the Chief Justice of Gambia, Lordship, the Chief Justices of Member States here present, Honorable Ministers of State here present, Attorney Generals and Deputy Attorney Generals here present, Deputy Attorney General of Gambia, President of the ECOWAS Commission represented here, Right Honorable Speaker of ECOWAS Parliament, Judges of the ECOWAS Court, Director General of ECOWAS institutions, Director General Giaba, President of EBED, President of UEMOA Court of Justice, Judges of the East African Court of Justice, Chairman of the African Commission, President of Bar Associations and International Bar Associations here in present, Heads of ECOWAS unit and desks, distinguished members, distinguished judges here present, special guests of honor, special guest of honor, Chief Justices here present, Chief Registrars and staff of the ECOWAS Court, members of the press, ladies and gentlemen. Your Excellencies, it's my pleasure to warmly welcome the President here represented on behalf of the ECOWAS Court to this opening ceremony of this international conference being hosted by the ECOWAS Court in this beautiful city of Banjul in the Republic of the Gambia. We are indeed delighted that despite the very busy schedule of His Excellency, he agreed to personally attend this opening ceremony and declare the event open. May I also seize this opportunity to welcome to this event all our invited dignitaries here present, including the Chief Justices and all persons here mentioned to have participated in this program. Your Excellencies, the ECOWAS Court of Justice organizes an international conference on an important theme every year in the territory of a member state in collaboration with the host government. It is the most important program in the annual work program of the court. We are indeed very delighted that His Excellency and the Vice and government of this country have accepted our request to host this international conference in Banjul. The international conference affords us the opportunity to bring together the honorable judges of the court, heads of ECOWAS institutions and units, regional courts, development partners, relevant stakeholders, including the chief justices, attorney generals, law professors, and other legal experts and resource persons, heads of national offices, bar associations, and civil society to discuss important thematic issues for the benefit of our community. This therefore provides an excellent forum for the cross-fertilization of ideas by legal experts, resource persons, and participants on these themes with regional significance from a regional perspective. The theme of this conference, ECOWAS's Zero Tolerance for Unconstitutional Change of Government. This theme is a burning issue, the violation of which is of very grave concern in our community, and it was very carefully chosen by the court because of the several incidents of unconstitutional change of government that we have witnessed in our sub-region in recent years. Indeed, there have been military interventions in governance through military coups in the past 2 years in 3 ECOWAS member states, the republics of Mali, Guinea, and Burkina Faso. As we speak, these member states are under military dictatorship and have been suspended from the community by the authority of heads of states and governments. Your Excellencies and distinguished participants, the intention of the court in choosing this theme is to focus on the need for participatory democracy and constitutional order in all ECOWAS member states, and in particular, on the ECOWAS policy of zero tolerance for unconstitutional change in government. Under the various sub-themes, the conference will also examine the linkages with the rule of law and the duty of member states to respect, protect, and fulfill human rights in their territories, the underlying factors of political instability, terrorism, and insecurity in the sub-region, failure by member states to fulfill their obligations to ECOWAS, weak institutions of member states, and the lack of political will for the implementation of community obligations. The other significant linkages the conference will examine include the mandate of the ECOWAS Court of Justice in facilitating the integration process of the community and in holding community states accountable for their treaty obligations, the roles of the national courts of member states
Windows 11 that is on that computer? No, this one, I don't know.
behind in its past the incidence of military interventions in governance. It is not in dispute that as at 20th May 1975, when the original treaty was established, ECOWAS was adopted in Lagos, Nigeria. 8 of the then 16 member states had signed onto the treaty were under military dictatorship that came through military coups. In the annals of our community, that era had been buried in the past until its recent resurrection. However, ECOWAS progressively overcame that era, and the new millennium boasted of democratic governance in all ECOWAS member states. However imperfect the constitutional orders were. It was a deliberate policy of ECOWAS that later resulted in its zero tolerance for unconstitutional change in governance in the community, in line with the trending global emphasis on participatory democracy and constitutional order. Despite the best efforts of ECOWAS to enthrone democracy, rule of law, and good governance in the sub-region, the unconstitutional change of government in the Tier 3 states is a grave setback for the community. It is therefore highly regrettable that the West African sub-region has once again suffered a rush of military interventions in governance, with the risk of spreading to other member states. The Authority of Heads of State and Government in ECOWAS has taken the proactive step of suspending the 3 member states from the community and imposed a range of sanctions, while still engaging with the military dictators for restoration of democracy and constitutional order as soon as possible. However, the Authority of Heads of State and Government at its summit in the last quarter of the year 2022 decided to recalibrate the security architecture of the community and declared its determination to establish a regional force that will intervene in the event of need, whether in the area of security, terrorism, or to restore constitutional order in member states in order to boost constitutional governance in member states. Finally, in 2001, when ECOWAS adopted the Protocol on Democracy and Good Governance, a supplementary instrument on the Protocol on Mechanism, Section 1 of the Protocol spells out the constitutional convergence principle of ECOWAS, among which are every accession to power must be made through free, fair, and transparent elections, zero tolerance for power obtained or maintained by unconstitutional means, popular participation in decision-making, strict adherence to democratic principles, and decentralization of power at all levels of governance. And armed forces must be apolitical and must be under the command of a legally constituted political authority. And no 7 member of the armed forces must seek to run for elective political office. The protocol also has copious provisions on the rule of law, human rights, and good governance, elections, the role of the armed forces, the police and security forces in the democracy, and the modalities for implementation of these sanctions. In a constitutional democracy, governance of a country is the exclusive prerogative of civilian leaders elected by the people in free and fair elections, and military must be subject to the control of civilian authority. Therefore, the role of the military is to protect the territorial integrity of the nation, and it should not turn into its guns against the government of the elected people. This is clearly emphasized by ECOWAS under its constitutional convergence principle as contained in the Protocol on Democracy and Good Governance. The said protocol also prescribes the role of the military in a democratic order as follows, and I quote, "The armed forces and the police shall be non-partisan and shall remain loyal to the nation. The role of the armed forces shall be to defend the independence and the territorial integrity of the state and its democratic institutions, unquote. The importance of the ECOWAS zero tolerance for a policy for unconstitutional change of government cannot be overemphasized. We cannot achieve our community objectives without the enthronement of participatory democracy, rule of law, good governance, and political stability. We also cannot overemphasize the importance of political pluralism and the right of the people to freely participate in their government. Furthermore, constitutional democracy will remain fragile or a mirage if there are no guarantees of free, fair, and transparent elections. Without doubt, rigging of elections is a major cause of political instability. The intervention of the armed forces in governance is an aberration that greatly undermines constitutional order, rule of law, and participatory democracy. It also hampers economic development, foreign direct investments in the economies of such countries, which are invariably further subjected to economic sanctions. It also undermines the human rights regime. In this day and age, the international community has no stomach for military coups, and such states invariably become pariah states in the Committee of Nations. ECOWAS has equally demonstrated that it has zero tolerance for such unconstitutional changes in government. We recognize that the member states are the most important stakeholders in ECOWAS. They must therefore continue to act collectively to prevent unconstitutional change of government and sanction defaulters. We also recognize that the political will of member states is a necessary factor for the achievement of this objective. It is necessary to provide the enabling democratic culture that should guarantee economic growth. I therefore urge all member states to take advantage of this conference to explore ways of providing a sustainable democratic culture in our community. It is our hope that this conference will identify the causes of unconstitutional changes of government and proffer recommendations that can put an end to military interventions in governance in our sub-region. Your Excellencies and all our distinguished participants, in conclusion, may I once more express the profound appreciation of the ECOWAS Court of Justice to the President of this Republic and the government for graciously honoring us with his presence at this opening ceremony. May I express our profound appreciation to the government of Gambia for collaborating with the court to host this conference in this beautiful city of Banjul, and for the warm African brotherly hospitality that has been extended to all the non-resident participants at this conference since our arrival in Banjul. May I also express our gratitude to the Chief Justice and judges of the member states here present, honorable ministers and high government officials in the Republic of the Gambia, and all distinguished participants at this conference for accepting to be part of this very important event. I am delighted that this conference gives us the opportunity to examine a very topical theme in the West African landscape. By the quality of the participants at this conference, and having had the privilege of previewing the high quality presentations to be made at this conference by our distinguished resource persons in respect of the various thematic areas in the next 3 days, I am confident that this conference will be very fruitful and that the outcome will be useful in charting a way forward to prevent future unconstitutional changes in government within our sub-region. I wish all of us very fruitful deliberations. Muito obrigado. Merci beaucoup pour votre aimable attention. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Justice Edward Amwako Asante. The tradition of the presence of sister institutions during our meetings allow the joy to share the presence for the goodwill messages. It is my pleasure to invite the Right Honorable Speaker of ECOWAS Parliament to take the floor for his goodwill message.
Your Excellency, the Honorable Vice President of the Republic of Gambia, the Honorable Chief Justice of the Republic of Gambia, the Honorable Justice Edward Amwako Asante, President of the ECOWAS Court of Justice, His Excellency, President of the ECOWAS Commission, represented here, Honorable Ministers of Government, Your Excellency, Auditor General of ECOWAS institutions, Your Excellencies, members of the Diplomatic Corps, Your Excellencies, Chief Justices from member states and representatives, honorable members of the National Assembly of the Gambia, distinguished judges, professors, and special guests here present, ladies and gentlemen. It is with a great sense of humility and honor that I stand before you representing the community parliament at this high-level gathering of regional service. On behalf of the membership of the ECOWAS Parliament, I wish to express my gratitude to His Lordship, the President of the ECOWAS Court of Justice, for unfailingly associating the Parliament in the activities of the court. This Banjul invitation, like the expected presence of the court at the openings of the sessions of the ECOWAS Parliament, demonstrates the strong level of cooperation that exists between our two institutions. As both the court and the Parliament represent core pillars of the institutional architecture of the ECOWAS community, our partnership undoubtedly symbolizes the positive progress in the evolution of the regional integration process. Your Lordship, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, regarding the subject matter that brings us here today, I do not wish to mince my words. It is boldly and aptly captured in the theme of the conference and reflects the position of every leader of the community for defiance that seeks to corrupt the understanding of the community acts that call for zero tolerance for unconstitutional change of government. As a result, the discussion set to take place over the next few days will, without a doubt, be very critical in the opinion of every stakeholder and well-meaning persons of the ECOWAS community towards the development and prosperity of our sub-region. As head of the community institution that represents the people of the sub-region, with the principle undertaking to confront issues that affect their lives, I acknowledge the importance of Parliament's participation in this conference, and I also proudly profess to its support of the theme, Zero Tolerance for Unconstitutional Change of Government. Reflections on the theme of the conference is pertinent at this period of time following the unsavory events that have transpired in our region, namely coup d'etats and the multifaceted military regimes in Mali, Guinea, and Burkina Faso. The worrisome regression of the democratic process exacerbated by these events are known and have been extensively developed in the concept note of the conference that has brought us all here. Fellow participants, what I want also to observe is that despite the existing legal and political instruments, both at community and member state levels, there is a resurgence of the eruption of military in the management of our collective political affairs. Mali, Guinea, and Burkina Faso, make no mistake, are being run by military juntas like in the era that preceded the democratic evolutions and awakening of the last decade of the 20th century. This is happening in violation of national constitutions and the relevant provisions of the ECOWAS Protocol on Democracy and Good Governance, all of which condemns coup d'etats. Another observation to be made here is that the motives put forward by the perpetrators of these coup d'etats seem to revolve around the idea of the poor governance style of the overthrown regimes, its inability to address security challenges, non-transparent elections, corruption, and others. However, can these motives really justify military takeovers, or are they simply pretexts on the part of the perpetrators of the coup d'etats to satisfy their personal intentions? These are questions that deserve objective answers, especially from the scholars invited to this conference. It is expected that you will identify better and broader perspectives within the context of the prevention of unconstitutional changes and other forms of attack on democracy. Another no less important observation is the support, be it a timid one, in some cases for the military junta. This should be objectively analyzed by various speakers at this conference. Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, from the point of view of the members of the ECOWAS Parliament, we unfortunately observe that the advent of these coups is still slow in bringing the required solutions to the sufferings of the population of the member states concerned in view of the growing insecurity and the persistent difficult living conditions. In terms of the outlook, I wish to end my message with the following food for thought. The mechanism for preventing unconstitutional changes is by attacking the root of the evil, which remains respect by leaders of limits of mandates and the rules of good political and economic governance. Now is the time to put an end to the tampering with constitutions and to make accountability prevail. Stringent sanctions regimes should be put in place to deter the perpetrators of unconstitutional changes while preserving the vital interests of the populations. We must nurture the right political and institutional culture at member state level to safeguard the principle of the separation of powers against the phenomenon of mechanical majority and civility of parliamentary majorities in the executive bodies. This is in response to the observation that the tampering with constitutions and electoral laws is the result of the serious dysfunction of republican institutions, including high courts involved in electoral disputes and/or interpretation of constitutional provisions. Fellow participants, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, the ECOWAS Parliament once again wholeheartedly welcomes the invitation extended to it to take part in this conference, especially given its current relevance in the community. I wish to assure you that the community parliament remains available and committed to playing its part in safeguarding democracy and the rule of law. Thank you for your kind attention. Merci beaucoup. Obrigado.
We thank the Honorable Speaker of the Parliament, ECOWAS, the voice of the people of the sub-region. In his capacity of Secretary General of the ECOWAS Bank of Investment and Development, he is representing the President of EBID in this gathering. I invite the Secretary General of EBID to take the floor for the goodwill message of the President of EBID to this international conference.
His Excellency, the Vice President of the Republic of the Gambia, His Excellency, the Chief Justice of the Gambia, Honorable Justice Edward Amoako Asante, Honorable President of the Community Court of Justice, Honorable Justices of the ECOWAS Community Court of Justice, heads of ECOWAS institutions, distinguished legal scholars, members of the press, dignitaries, and invited guests, all protocol observed. It's an honor to address this eminent gathering on behalf of Dr. George Ajekun Donko, President of the ECOWAS Bank for Investment Development, EBID, who could not attend due to prior engagements. Permit me to express our appreciation to the ECOWAS Community Court of Justice for inviting EBID to participate in this program. The theme of this conference, ECOWAS Zero Tolerance for Unconstitutional Changes of Government, is key to the development of the ECOWAS member states. These discussions could not have come at a more pivotal moment as countries experience the economic shocks caused by the Russia-Ukraine crisis and the aftermath of the COVID-19 pandemic. Ladies and gentlemen, over the past 3 years, the ECOWAS sub-region has been battling with a surge of unconstitutional overthrows, posing a threat that the former chairman of the Authority of Heads of States and Government of ECOWAS, His Excellency Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, President of Ghana, described as contagious in January 2022. Although the factors leading to such political unrest vary from one member state to another, there are certain shared commonalities to be observed. One, problematic legislative infrastructure. Two, economic instability. Three, and security concerns. It is critical that member states and indeed all stakeholders enhance their efforts to address the foregoing issues to avoid the unpleasant effects and challenges associated with unconstitutional changes in government. In fact, undemocratic changes in government tend to exacerbate economic inequality and undermine the community's objectives of durable socio-economic development to positively impact the lives of vulnerable populations and regional integration. More specifically, as far as EBID is concerned, we cannot overstress the need for a peaceful and well-governed environment, as this would positively impact our rating and therefore enable us to immobilize resources at a reasonable cost for the benefit of our populations. Therefore, it is important that ECOWAS adhere to this stance and impress upon countries in such situations the importance of upholding the rule of law while addressing the needs of the people. At the same time, the community must exert greater efforts to establish mechanisms that promote cooperation and prevent isolation, reducing the risk of undemocratic takeovers, including enhancing collaboration for security operations, especially to counter extremist or terrorist activity, and actualization of community recognized protocols by incorporating them into the legal framework of the country at the country level. It is our hope that this conference will engender positive outcomes and result in dynamic collaborations to contribute to the advancement and prosperity of the ECOWAS sub-region. I wish you fruitful deliberations throughout this program. Merci beaucoup pour votre attention. Thank you for your kind attention. Muito obrigado.
Another sister institution represented here is the GIABA, whose DG is present in our midst to deliver his goodwill message. Mr. DG.
Thank you very much. Please permit me to stay on existing protocols. I bring you greetings from the senior management and entire secretariat of GIABA. We use this medium to convey our unqualified thanks and appreciation to the President and staff of the Court of Justice for the organization of this all-important conference on democracy and good governance, with the end game of bringing sensitization to all stakeholders on the resounding no to any unconstitutional means to disrupt our democratization process. Democracy as a form of government has passed the test of time over the last 200 years and more in human history. It has proven to be the surest way to peace, stability, security, prosperity. Hence, discussions surrounding democracy and the process of democratization, along with good governance, remain the single most currency for the advancement and protection of both the fundamental and inalienable rights of mankind. At GIABA, our work in fighting and preventing money laundering, terrorist financing, and the proliferation of the weapon of mass destruction hinges on a functional governance system where the rule of law is actively operational. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, it is evident that economic growth and shared prosperity are the functions of stability, which comes from the adherence to democratic tendencies of abiding by the express will of the people and by the people. It is about time, if democracy and the democratization process will flourish in our region, we must provide democratic space for the people in whom all power is inherent. It is time we move to another level in our process of democracies that allow our institutions to independently function in protecting the will, aspiration, and consent of the people. Most often, these unconstitutional means come about because of the lack and absence of this independent institution. It is our hope that collectively, we all will abide by, at all costs by the law of our individual countries in the region. It is also important that putting the rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness are the core function of our public policy. The benefit of democratization and good governance ranges from security, peace, and equal access to justice, and shared prosperity for all. Another area to be looked at is the now new era of misinformation and disinformation in our governance process. This process incites and destabilizes our institution, thereby bringing in the military. It is important that our judicial system look into this matter of misinformation and disinformation. Because of the economic activities in our region, with over 80% of our youth unemployed, missing this information will serve as an impetus for military intervention. It is important that we look in this area critically. Once more, I congratulate the court for this noteworthy initiative and look forward to the cross-fertilization of ideas over the next few days. I thank you.
His office was seen before as the gendarme of ECOWAS institutions, but today he's the most friendly boss that we have within the community. I invite the auditor of ECOWAS institution to take the floor.
His Excellency, Mr. Vice President of the Republic of the Gambia, Sua Excelência, Senhor Ministro da Justiça de Gâmbia, Sua Excelência, Senhores Ministros da CEDEAO, Sua Excelência, Senhor Speaker do Parlamento da CEDEAO, venerando Presidente do Tribunal da CEDEAO, venerando juízes do Tribunal da CEDEAO, venerando juízes convidados aqui presentes, Excelência, minhas senhoras e minhas senhoras, meus senhores, distintos convidados, todos os protocolos observados. Faço uma pausa para ver se todos acompanham mais uma língua da CEDEAO que normalmente. É com grande satisfação que, na qualidade de auditor-geral das instituições da CEDEAO, uso de palavra nesta importantíssima conferência internacional sob o tema Tolerância Zero da CEDEAO para mudanças inconstitucionais do governo. Senhor Presidente do Tribunal da CEDEAO, felicito pela organização e escolha do tema, que espero concordarem comigo quanto à sua pertinência e atualidade, pois constitui um dos elementos ou fatores fundamentais quanto críticos ao desenvolvimento e à consolidação da democracia no nosso espaço comunitário. Infelizmente, temos testemunhado várias ameaças e riscos no nosso espaço comunitário, nomeadamente o fenômeno do terrorismo e, nos últimos anos, alterações de ordem constitucional por via de golpes de Estado, fatos que contribuem para instabilidade política e aumento da violência em vários países do nosso espaço, e também espero colaborarem comigo de que essas alterações também têm como consequência o aumento da pobreza. Contudo, a CEDEAO, baseada nos seus princípios fundamentais, que são, entre outras, a melhoria do bem-estar das populações, tem sido firme na sua posição anti-golpes de Estado nos Estados-membros, pois, indubitavelmente, a democracia é um valor fundamental que deve ser protegido e, por isso, devemos continuar a lutar contra qualquer forma de governo não democrático e ilegal. No entanto, a defesa da democracia não deve cingir-se apenas sobre a forma como os governos são eleitos ou destituídos, mas também sobre como os governos respondem à necessidade e aspiração dos cidadãos. Neste contexto, a boa governação e a accountability são cruciais para o desenvolvimento socioeconômico e a prosperidade da CEDEAO dos povos. É importante lembrar que a gestão transparente e consequente dos recursos públicos é essencial para garantir a estabilidade política e a segurança na região e são fatores fundamentais que contribuem para a democracia. A falta de transparência e accountability na gestão de recursos públicos pode levar à corrupção e à má gestão, o que, por sua vez, pode prejudicar o desenvolvimento econômico e social e, consequentemente, constituírem fontes de instabilidade política. Nesta matéria, a CEDEAO é destacada como um exemplo notável, pois as autoridades da nossa comunidade procederam à reforma institucional da nossa organização com o objetivo de garantir economia, eficiência e eficácia na utilização dos recursos provenientes da contribuição dos cidadãos da comunidade. Estas medidas foram tomadas visando melhorar as condições da vida das populações, pois, a nível nacional, enquanto não se conseguir dar respostas aos anseios das nossas populações, gerindo com eficiência, eficácia e economia os recursos públicos disponíveis, mais desafiante será a luta contra as alterações do quadro constitucional dos nossos diferentes países. Por isso, é essencial que todos os atores e partes interessadas trabalhem juntos para garantir que a boa governação, transparência e accountability e a participação cidadã prevaleça na nossa região, pois somente assim teremos o reforço das nossas instituições democráticas. Para combater a má gestão e corrupção, é essencial garantir que as instituições judiciais funcionem e que as instituições superiores de controle sejam fortalecidas e capazes de realizar suas funções de forma independente e imparcial. Excelências, minhas senhoras e meus senhores, é hora de unir esforços em prol da transparência, accountability e a boa governação na CEDEAO. Como auditor-geral da CEDEAO, gostaria de reafirmar o meu compromisso em continuar a trabalhar no reforço da governação, na base de transparência na estrutura da CEDEAO e, igualmente, estreitar relações com as estruturas de controle externo para assegurar que a gestão de recursos públicos seja feita de maneira transparente, garantindo o value for money. Juntos podemos garantir que a CEDEAO continuará avançando em direção a um futuro mais estável, democrático e próspero para todos os seus cidadãos. Agradeço a todos pela vossa atenção e o vosso compromisso com a defesa da democracia via boa governação, transparência e accountability em nossa região. Thank you for your attention. Merci beaucoup por vossa atenção. Muito obrigado.
This comes to the end of our goodwill messages. He is in our midst, and I want to invite the storyteller of Gambia, the famous Musa Soso, to give us 2 minutes of Kora music.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I am Mariama Cham, and this is Musa Soso. Sabae konolelo, saba miniyamba, saba miniyamba, sabae konolelo, itole, idole, wesu jamile, minu beno meka bena, sunko defe, riami mengadam kana majami Afrika, miniyamba, saba miniyamba. Sabae konolelo, sabae, miniyamba, sabae konolelo, kubale ketana, kule ketana wo, kubale ketana. Thank you.
I would like to invite Her Excellency Ambassador French, representing the President Commission ECOWAS, to take the floor for the statement of the President of ECOWAS Commission.
Your Excellency, Vice President of the Republic of Gambia, President and Vice President of the Community Court of Justice, ECOWAS, and other members of court, heads of other ECOWAS institutions here present, my Lord Chief Justice of the Republic of Gambia and other Chief Justices here present, the Attorney General of the Gambia and other Attorney Generals here present, the Honorable Minister of Trade and other cabinet members, members of the Gambian National Assembly, members of the bar and bench from ECOWAS member states and other jurisdictions, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. I would first of all like to tender the apologies of the President of the ECOWAS Commission, Dr. Umar Aliu Toure, who is unavoidably absent due to other engagements. Let me join previous speakers to welcome you all to Banjul and to congratulate the ECOWAS Court of Justice on the holding of this international conference. Indeed, the ICC in Banjul is fast becoming the place to be for regional meetings, and I must add that Gambia and Gambians are beginning to master the art of transforming the hospitality that they are known for in the tourism industry to hosting meetings such as this. The theme for this international conference of the Community Court of Justice is both timely and pertinent, as it seeks to address one of the biggest problems in the sub-region. It is only fitting that the judiciary, which we all know as a third arm of government, should spend some time to dilate on the issue of undemocratic changes of government, as it is, ironically, when such changes occur, they are in some cases the only arm of government that remains relatively intact in form, if not necessarily in practice. Distinguished participants, the ECOWAS Commission remains firm in its stance of zero tolerance to unconstitutional change of government. Over the past few years, the region has seen an unwelcome backslide into the era of coups and other undemocratic practices. This has meant that the Commission is spending resources that could have been used for much needed development activities on peace support operations. While the ECOWAS Commission will continue to sanction and take other agreed measures to ensure the return to democratic rule, the simple fact remains that prevention is always better than cure. Coups like COVID and other infectious diseases must be prevented because if they are allowed to occur, their repercussions and effects may last long after the original symptoms have been addressed. These days, we hear a lot of talk about long COVID, but in the past, we have been quite familiar with the paralysis that remained in children, even after they had been cured of the polio virus. Unfortunately, unlike diseases, unconstitutional changes in government cannot be prevented by a shot in the arm. In fact, they are usually achieved by shots, albeit of a different nature. Distinguished guests, you will also agree with me that as far back as Adam and Eve, it was determined that it is difficult to legislate good behavior. In most cases, the old adage, temptation makes the thief, holds true. We must therefore consider what can be done to reduce the circumstances that create the opportunities for coups. Among these could be the strengthening of legislated means of settlement of electoral disputes, creating a space for inclusive political dialogue to which the ECOWAS Commission is fully committed. When you're asked to speak among those who study argument for a living, the less said, the better. So let me close by thanking the Community Court for this year's choice of theme and say that we look forward to the recommendations on this issue. Thank you and wish you all a fruitful and no doubt learned deliberations.
Thank you, Madam Ambassador French, resident representative of the President ECOWAS Commission in the Gambia. It is my pleasure now to invite the Honorable Minister of Justice of the Republic of the Gambia to take the floor.
Your Excellency, the Vice President of the Republic of the Gambia, my Lord, the Chief Justice of the Republic of the Gambia and other Chief Justices here present, His Excellency, the ECOWAS President represented by the ECOWAS Ambassador, the Honorable Speaker of the ECOWAS Parliament, my Lord, the President of the ECOWAS Community Court and members of the court here present, my colleague, the Trade Minister, who is in charge of the sector in government regarding ECOWAS matters and other cabinet ministers present here, Attorney Generals and Deputy Attorney Generals and Ministers of Justice here present, I beg your permission to stand on all the other existing protocols here present. It gives me immense pleasure to extend a hearty welcome to each one of you. We are privileged to host the esteemed judges of Economic Community of West African States ECOWAS Court, the Attorney Generals, the Chief Justices, the legal practitioners, friends from the academia, and other participants from our sister countries. The choice of this year's conference, ECOWAS, Zero Tolerance for Unconstitutional Change of Government, could not have come at a better time. It signifies our commitment to strengthening democracy, preserving constitutional order, and respecting the rule of law, and echoing sentiments that is very relevant to our West African sub-region. In the Gambia, our history has taught us the importance of this commitment. We have witnessed the turmoil that ensues when constitutional norms are violated. These experiences have been our lessons, hard taught and deeply learned. They have become the force propelling us forward, fueling our desire for a democratic society rooted in justice and respect for the rule of law. Each one of us, as legal practitioners, carries a significant responsibility. We are the custodians of justice, the protectors of rights, and the guardians of our constitutions. Our task may be challenging, complex, and often demanding, but it is within these very challenges that we discover our potential. Our past experiences have shaped us, but they do not define us. Today, the Gambia stands as a testament to the resilience of the people who chose to prioritize unity, peace, and justice over discord, conflict, and impunity. As the Minister of Justice, I am dedicated to ensuring that we continue on this path, that we uphold the ideals of Constitution, and that we never again stray into shadows of unconstitutional governance. Our gathering here today is more than a conference. It is a statement to our shared commitment, our shared values, and our shared goals. Let us leverage this opportunity to learn from one another, to share our experiences, and to transform strategies, to brainstorm strategies that promote democracy, uphold the rule of law, and prevent unconstitutional changes of governments. I'm confident that the discussions and deliberations over the next few days will inspire us, challenge us, and guide us towards a more prosperous, peaceful, and democratic West Africa. Let me also invite you to explore the Gambia while you are here. Take time to enjoy our rich and diverse culture, our scenic landscapes, and our warm hospitality. We are a country that prides itself on its resilience, its unity, and its commitment to democratic values. We hope that you will carry a piece of the Gambia with you when you leave. Once again, I extend my warmest welcome to each one of you. I look forward to engaging, thought-provoking, and productive discussions. Let's join hands and work together for a better tomorrow, a brighter future, and a stronger West Africa. Thank you very much.
Honorable Minister will not carry Gambia to go, but will come very often. Il est le ministre en charge des affaires de la CEDEAO et il me plaît d'inviter le ministre du Commerce, de l'Industrie et de l'Intégration régionale à prendre la parole pour son allocution.
Your Excellency, the Vice President of the Republic of the Gambia, my Lord, the Chief Justice of the Gambia and other Chief Justices present, President of the ECOWAS Commission, President of the ECOWAS Court of Justice and Chief Judges, Chief Registrar, the ECOWAS Court of Justice, heads of ECOWAS institutions, Honorable Attorney Generals, fellow cabinet members present and members of the National Assembly, senior government officials, excellencies, members of the Diplomatic and Consular Corps, the ECOWAS Special Representative to the Gambia, staff from ECOWAS institutions, experts from member states, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. Kindly permit me to welcome our distinguished guests and diplomats from the sub-region and beyond to the smiling coast of Africa, the Gambia. In the Gambia, we are proud of the adage, every smile is genuine. That said, it is my pleasure to welcome you all to this very important conference on the theme, ECOWAS Zero Tolerance for Unconstitutional Change of Government. On behalf of the President of the Republic of the Gambia and the Gambian people, on behalf of His Excellency Adama Barrow, I want to extend our sincere thanks and appreciation to the ECOWAS Commission through its president, Dr. Omar Aliu Toure, for their commitment to strengthening regional integration. I would like to further thank the ECOWAS Commission through the Community Court of Justice for choosing the Gambia to host this very important conference. The conference demonstrates the importance ECOWAS attaches to regional peace, security, and stability. Over the past few years, the African continent has witnessed an unprecedented surge in the number of military coups, especially in our region, ECOWAS. This has posed a huge threat to the fundamental principles of ECOWAS, that is, economic integration through trade for enhanced standards of living for community citizens and promotion of regional stability through maintenance of peace and security, as well as good governance. The theme for the conference could not be crafted any better and come at a better time. And the need to discuss and address on democratic change of governments cannot be overemphasized. The resurgence of military coups and other governance-related issues, such as election-related violence, constitutes a setback for the democratic process in Africa. Yet this happens at a time when the African Union and regional economic communities are striving to fine-tune their relevant mechanisms and policies or instruments to address what has been identified as one of the major sources of dysfunctionality of the post-colonial African state. Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, the unconstitutional change of governments has impacted negatively on the economic development of the continent for far too long. Military coups provoke unrest and instability in the nations involved and even in those beyond, distract leaders and people from making significant investments, and promotes widespread financial corruption. This has manifested itself in countries that have undergone military coups recently. The number of refugees and internally displaced individuals compelled to relocate to more stable locations increased as a result of military coups and conflict across Africa. Currently, 1/3 of all people who have been forcibly relocated live in Africa. Huge economic consequences were triggered by this refugee crisis, including declining growth rates, rising poverty rates, low median personal income, deteriorating infrastructure, family dissolutions brought about by forced relocation and casualties, kidnappings of children, and recruitment of vulnerable children into armed combat. The political upheaval brought about by military coups throughout Africa slowed down the continent's key economic operations, including mining, the oil industry, and agriculture. Parties engaged in political or military conflict compete for control of those or these resources or sabotage supplies to exert pressure on their rivals. Production of vital commodities is affected, which distorts domestic economies, drives up global prices, and increases concerns about supply disruptions going forward. Such environment brings in untold suffering of our people, and as a consequence, divert all efforts away from critical development issues towards a search for peace and stability. Recognizing the threats that unconstitutional changes of governments poses to the continent's economic development, general security, and stability, the African Union devised several methods to deal with this undesirable and unconstitutional method of changing governments, such as the Lomé Declaration, often known as the Constitutive Act, and the African Charter on Democracy, Elections, and Governance, adopted by the Union in July 2000 and January 2007, respectively. In addition, the adoption of the ECOWAS protocol relating to the mechanism for conflict prevention, management, resolution, peacekeeping, and security, and the supplementary protocol on democracy and governance in December 2001, as well as the establishment of early warning centers across the region to complement those of the continental body, all geared towards the promotion of good governance, regional peace, and stability. Your Excellencies, need for more to address the continental pandemic, which I hope this conference comes up with a formula to permanently prevent. Your Excellencies, mindful of the current geographical environment and recent waves of conflict, the need to redouble our efforts to secure peace and stability and entrench the principles of good governance, democracy, and human rights, we risk losing our hard-earned economic gains over the years. We must work together to stop our continent being used as a platform for proxy wars by any group of people as a means of competing for our resources while we continue to languish in poverty. Given the current fragility of our economies, we cannot afford to slide back to military and undemocratic means of changing governments characterized by civil unrest, violent extremism, and general instability. The government of the Gambia hopes that this conference will discuss the theme comprehensively and come up with strong recommendations or resolutions to ending all forms of unconstitutional change of government in our region. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, in conclusion, I wish to express our deep and sincere appreciation to the ECOWAS Commission for organizing such an important conference to address such an important socio-economic challenge of our region and times. No meaningful development can take place without peace and stability, and therefore whatever disrupts that ecosystem must be frowned upon by all. I thank you all for your kind attention and wish you fruitful deliberations.
Merci, Monsieur le ministre. Et il me plaît, enfin, parmi des allocutions des autorités ministérielles, d'inviter enfin le président de la Cour suprême, Chief Justice Jallow, à prendre la parole.
Your Excellency, Mr. Vice President of the Republic of the Gambia, Honorable Chief Justices and Judges here present, the Honorable Representative of the President of the ECOWAS Commission, the President of the ECOWAS Court of Justice, the President of the ECOWAS Parliament, our guest speaker, the Honorable Professor Chidi Odinkalu, Honorable Ministers, members of the Diplomatic Corps, distinguished guests, delegates. It's my great pleasure to join the previous speakers in welcoming all of you here to this meeting organized by the ECOWAS on this important theme. We look forward to spending the next few days, next 3 days together, exploring ways in which we can strengthen good governance in our region in order to promote peace and progress in the Sahel area and throughout the ECOWAS region. Both the venue and the theme could not be more appropriate and relevant to our times. The Sahel region, which covers much of the ECOWAS, is today seriously confronted with conflict with violence, and with violations of human rights to the detriment of much of our population. But when we look around in the Gambia, we see some positive signs. The signs of the economic presence demonstrate the potential of our collective efforts through this institution of the ECOWAS, through our regional grouping in the prevention and resolution of conflict and the restoration of constitutionalism and the entrenchment of good governance. The military and diplomatic intervention of the ECOWAS here in the Gambia in 2017 to prevent conflict and to support the constitutional order must be regarded as one of the finest moments of the ECOWAS. We in the Gambia owe a debt of gratitude to the ECOWAS and to the ECOMIG for their very timely and effective intervention in the Gambia to avert disaster and to restore the rule of law and constitutionalism. We also congratulate the ECOWAS and its institution, the ECOWAS Court of Justice, for this very important initiative in organizing this conference in collaboration with the Gambia government. Distinguished guests, there is undoubtedly a strong linkage between insecurity, as we continue to experience it in the Sahel, and governance. At the heart of many conflicts and of much of the community violence lie issues of justice, issues of governance, and issues of deprivation. Poor governance is, of course, not an excuse for violence. It's not an excuse for terrorism or other forms of violence, but it nonetheless provides a very fertile breeding ground for conflict, for terrorism and violence. The organization of such a conference, and indeed the great work that the ECOWAS has undertaken in improving the governance architecture of our region and within its member states, is strong recognition of this strong linkage between the two. We must not provide fertile breeding grounds which may enable those who would wish to destroy our communities. And in order to do so, we must nurture, we must cultivate and sustain in all the member states an environment of good governance based on constitutionalism, based on respect for the rule of law and human rights, and on justice, as well as on social and economic progress and integrity and accountability in public life. These are all legitimate expectations and entitlements of our citizens, but they are also the strongest foundations for peace and stability within our community. They are the strongest foundations for progress and a very strong bulwark against conflict and violence. Faithful adherence to constitutional principles must be the bedrock of governance. Those in authority must not be permitted to subvert the Constitution for their own ends. Those aspiring to power must do so through the constitutional processes which are based on the cardinal principle that government must rest on the consent of the governed, that it must, as had been said tritely, it must be of the people, for the people, and by the people. On constitutional changes of government, which deny the people their fundamental right to choose their government, as enshrined in all our national constitutions, as enshrined in the Banjul Charter on Human and People's Rights, in the declarations of the African Union, and of course of the ECOWAS, as well as the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, amongst others, must be condemned and resisted as a major violation of the right of the people to choose those who govern them. The fundamental rights and freedoms recognized by our constitutions and by these other instruments, together with the international human rights legal regime, must not be mere promises or words. They lie at the core of respecting and enhancing the dignity of individuals and therefore the health and well-being of our communities. These rights and freedoms must be respected by public as well as by private authorities. National as well as regional mechanisms for their enforcement need to be strengthened and utilized effectively. distinguished guests, timely and fair resolution of conflicts and disputes among citizens or between citizens and the state can contribute significantly to peace and stability in the community. We must therefore invest heavily in our judiciaries and other dispute resolution mechanisms to enable them to deliver justice expeditiously, independently, impartially, and fairly, so that the community can reap the social and economic dividends of peace, stability, and economic progress which flow from established rule of law and constitutionalism. Above all, we must not relent in the struggle against corruption and for the promotion of integrity and honesty in public life. For corruption undermines and saps the state structure and overall any system of good governance based on respect for the Constitution. It leads to wrong decision-making on important public issues. It causes economic and financial loss. But above all, it undermines public confidence in the state structure itself. The next 2 days provide us with the opportunity to consider some of these and other pressing issues which impact on good governance and possibly on security as well in our region. Much has been done already, both in the context of the African Union and in the ECOWAS, but many challenges to peace, challenges to progress, and to development and good governance remain. I am, however, confident that we will together rise to these challenges and that perhaps out of this Banjul conference, we will be able together to chart a way forward to an improved framework for and a greater impetus to the drive for good governance as an engine for combating insecurity and for the attainment of sustained peace and progress in the ECOWAS region. I thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Honorable Chief Justice, for giving us the assurance of better days in our sub-region. It is a tradition that our theme of our conference being developed, analyzed on the academic vision. It is my pleasure to invite Professor Chidi Odinkalu, a brilliant activist on human rights, to take the floor and give us the substance of his analysis.
Your Excellency, the Sovereign, the Honorable the Chief Justice, Hassan Jando, Mr. Judge President and judges of the Court of Justice, can I respectfully please apply to abide by all existing acknowledgements? And in so doing, also extend my thanks and solidarity to the Court of Justice for finding it fit to organize this particular meeting. And at this particular venue, named after one of the founding fathers of ECOWAS, one of the original signatories to the treaty, who himself, 19 years after the treaty was signed, suffered an unconstitutional change in government. And in 1997, went to the African Commission on Human and People's Rights, where the Commission in 2000 laid out broad principles concerning the subject of unconstitutional changes in government, the same year in which the African Union was founded. And that's the case of Sadauda Jawara v. the Gambia. Can I also suggest, in addition to the points already made by the judge president, that there are very compelling reasons for this particular gathering at this particular time. And it's not just because there's a rise in so-called military coups, and I'll get to that in a moment. But the first is that we are all citizens, citizens of countries who deserve to participate in installing our governments. As my people say, you don't shave a person's head in their absence. And an unconstitutional change in government amounts to shaving the heads of citizens in their absence. The second is an instrumental reason. Unconstitutional changes in government fundamentally could transform and do transform the regional security landscape in instability. The third reason is particularly in a gathering of judges and lawyers and legal scholars, these issues are going to end up in court. They're already doing so. And I'll indicate one or two cases that suggest that there will be more of such issues in court, and we've got to be prepared. There's a tendency amongst lawyers and judges, of course, to clothe the powerful with the benefit of legal doubt. And many of us have been trained in the jurisprudence of military law and military rule that tells us that a coup is a self-legalizing illegality and creates a new normative order of its own. And therefore, a lot of us of the realist positivist disposition would ask, what are we doing here? After all, if a coup succeeds, it creates a new legal order. If it fails, it is treason. But such focus on outdated doctrinal dispositions would not necessarily enable us to understand why we're here. We're all living through, as we speak, the crisis in Sudan, caused by Sudan's 18th coup attempt since 1958, a country that has had 6 successful coups. But Sudan may be the most prolific in coup attempts. West Africa is where the most successful coups have happened. Africa, by the way, has provided 43.8% of the 486 coups recorded globally since 1950. And we've also recorded 44.26% of the successful coups globally. West Africa has provided over 50% of that number. And on the whole, there have been about 169 incidents of coups, attempted coups and mutinies in West Africa alone. The most successful country in coup plotting in Africa is Burkina Faso, which has had 8 successful coups out of 9 attempts. There's a tie for second place, and that includes Nigeria and Benin Republic with 6. So West Africa has a lot to offer in this. And as we have heard, 7 of the 15 original signatories to the ECOWAS Treaty in May 1975 were generals who came to power by coups. Of the remainder, 6 were replaced by soldiers. Of the other 2, that's President Houphouët-Boigny in Côte d'Ivoire and President Senghor in Senegal, President Houphouët-Boigny was replaced by his designated successor, who himself was sacked by a general. And in Senegal, as we speak, they are going through their own contact with third term. The only West African country, therefore, that proves to be the exception to the general rule is Cape Verde. This is a subject matter that affects and afflicts absolutely all of our countries without exception. But this month is also the 71st month of the Free Officers' Coup in Egypt, which kicked off Africa's post-1945 contact with the phenomenon of unconstitutional changes in government. And if you go strictly by the numbers and chronology, that was probably not Africa's first coup. In 1935, General Mussolini toppled the government of the emperor in Ethiopia and exiled Emperor Haile Selassie to the United Kingdom. And if you go further back, 188 years ago, our ancestors were sacked by a conference attended by people who had never visited our continent that took place in Berlin between November 1884 and February 26, 1885, and carved up our countries into the boundaries that we know today. Berlin was a coup. There is therefore a continuous trajectory from the onset of colonial occupation to what we call coups today. And as a matter of fact, what we call a coup is a symbolism that has its origins in the colonial conquest. But I could go further back in time because this is also not just an issue limited to West Africa or to Africa. Adolf Hitler actually overthrew an elected regime, the President Hindenburg. And Napoleon Bonaparte himself, the author of the Napoleonic Codes, which a lot of the civil law countries base their systems on, himself planned a coup. And for those who are interested in history or literature, Julius Caesar, of course, was himself toppled and assassinated. Human history and power over time has had to deal with coups. The evolution that we are dealing with is recent, but needs to be consolidated because its benefits far outweigh whatever we have seen, and particularly the instability associated with coups. And that is to say that there's been a normative shift over history in how humanity has dealt with coups and unconstitutional changes in government. The instrumentalization of power through unconstitutional changes has also evolved. And the functionality of power and its foundations has as well have themselves evolved. I don't propose to go through all of that because for the purposes of this particular presentation, I hereby apply and request that my paper, which is already with organizers, be read into the records. That will enable me to highlight about 7 points in the paper and I'll be done. One is that we do have, maybe I should clarify that we do have a geospatial complication. Although we are here discussing ECOWAS, all member states of ECOWAS are also member states of the African Union. And ECOWAS also includes the 8 member states of the UMOA. And so we do have geospatial overlaps. And you have this work on this particular issue of unconstitutional changes in government taking place within UMOA, the ECOWAS, the African Union, contemporaneously. And enforcement and compliance norms are not particularly well aligned. And that, I would like to suggest, is one of the issues we've got to address over the course of this particular meeting. Coordination between the various regional institutions that are implicated in the subject matter of unconstitutional changes in government. And when we go back, we will also see that it's not just geospatial coordination, it is also intertemporal coordination. The development started within ECOWAS and within the OAU, within their conflict resolution mechanisms, which links this particular issue to the question of regional stability. And over time, there has been there's been an intertemporal element that suggests one is sometimes ahead of the other or one is sometimes before the other. Now, let me try and say this as I try to wind this down. There is not one norm against unconstitutional change in government. There are three norms in one. I've heard a lot here said about military coups this morning, but when you look at the trajectory of evolution of the norms in both the AU or the OAU, the AU, and ECOWAS, this is what has happened. Number one, there is a norm for legitimate access to power through elections. Number two, there is a norm on precluding and prohibiting presidential indeterminacy of tenure elongation. And number three, when you have acquired power legitimately and you have observed the limits on tenure, the norm on unconstitutional changes in government protects you in power. So the norm on unconstitutional change in government is not a norm to rig election to stay in power. It is not a norm to change the constitution like President Condé did in Guinea. It is a norm to make sure that there is legitimate political contestation and respect for the rights of participation of the people. This is why coups have returned. Because instead of observing the three parts of the norm, incumbents have converted the third part of the norm and subverted the first two. They've subverted the first two parts, converted the third part to their protection, and they have therefore endangered regional stability. We have to return to what the norm was meant to do. This is the gist of everything in the paper, really, and this is the gist of the point. There is every reason to condemn soldiers, but today we have military coups and constitutional coups. What is threatening to take place in Senegal is a constitutional coup. It affects all of us. This is our region, and that is why I'm not here as a lawyer. I'm here as a citizen of West Africa. And because this is my region, we will come here to fight for it. I don't have two passports. I don't know who else here has, but I don't have two. This is where it ends. Our region is worth fighting for. We have to condemn soldiers, but let's also condemn political adventurers. And let me try and end very quickly, because something is happening. And this is where it concerns all of us. We have to defend our judges. What is happening now is they are no longer amending constitutions. They are going to terrorize the judges to give them tenure extension. And that is a gap in the normative infrastructure. What happens when you get a court order to extend the tenure of a president? We went to the East African Court of Justice in the Yaksof case. The East African Court of Justice is here. The East African Civil Society Forum against Burundi in 2015 to fight the case of President Nkurunziza's tenure extension. And in that case, President Nkurunziza had secured his tenure extension through the Constitutional Court in Burundi. The first instance chamber of the East African Court of Justice told us they were not established to review decisions of national courts and threw us out. In 2018, the appellate chamber reinstated the case and reverted it back to the first instance chamber for decision. We are still waiting. President Nkurunziza is dead. But that is the first chink in the armor, and the suggestion that this matter is going to get into courts. I understand some countries who are going through this in the West African sub-region are putting papers together to explore regional litigation, and this matter is heading to court. We've got to be ready. So let me end on this note, because we've got 2.5 more days to discuss this, and we've got a sovereign waiting here. There is something else called the popular uprising. And the popular uprising has become the last resort of citizens and countries where government has outlived its usefulness, leadership has passed its sell-by date, but they want to hold the people hostage. And there have been at least 7 popular uprisings in Africa since 2011, which have got rid of presidents who refused to go. The African Union norms do not know how to handle popular uprisings. And part of what I hope we will deal with in the technical conversations is what exactly is the phenomenon of popular uprising and where does it exist in the firmament of our regional norms on this subject matter. Essentially, over the next 2 days, we'll examine the tools at the disposal of the Court of Justice in this matter. It is possible that unconstitutional changes could come to the Court of Justice through advisory opinions. We've already seen at the African Court that COVID and elections have gone before the African Court as advisory issue. Or they could come by contentious jurisdiction, as we've seen with the East African Civil Society Forum case. And therefore, we've got to contemplate what will be the remedies. What manner of remedies will a court faced with this issue be able to fashion? And the law of international law of remedies since the beginning of the last century is that you fashion remedies to meet the facts. And finally, we face the question of what will happen if the courts give judgment that the states don't like. And we've seen that with the African Court and the blowback against Africa's regional institutions. And so part of what I hope we are also going to be addressing here will be how to reinforce the protection of our courts and judges as they confront this matter and as this matter drags them into the maelstrom of political contestation. And finally, as I end, there is one request, particularly for our host state. The Malabo Protocol that amends and updates the African Court of Justice and Human Rights creates a crime of unconstitutional change in government. That would mean that those who do this can be punished, dragged before a continental court of justice, and actually punished in time. But no African government has agreed to ratify the Malabo Protocol. So my request is very simple. In this very great edifice, named after one of the founding fathers of ECOWAS, can we extract a commitment from the President of the Republic of the Gambia to ratify, before we leave this conference, the Malabo Protocol? I thank you.
I will just invite our chorists to give us 2 minutes of nice kora while we await His Excellency, the Vice President, to declare this conference open.
Jinka, mama tamba for you, Jinka, mama tamba for you, Jilanka, Lanka. Mama Tamba for you, Sri 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 Lanka. Koli boita koli kanne jame, Sri Koli boita koli kanne jame. Sitamunko koliboy tijare Sri Lanka. Bitala jakalu yale sutukun. Bitala jakalu yale sutukun. Foli minte dolo lemina ibesuna. Foli minte sutele lala ibesanina. Mama Tamba for you, Sri Lanka. For you, Sri Lanka. For you, Sri Lanka. For you, Sri Lanka. Mama Tamba for you, Sri Lanka. Thank you.
As we have announced at the beginning of our session, His Excellency President Adama Barrow gave a strong support for this international conference. He is represented here by His Excellency the Vice President, who we invite to declare this session open. Your Excellency, the Vice President, you have the floor.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. My Lord, the Chief Justice of the Republic of the Gambia and other Chief Justices here present, members of the Diplomatic and Consular Corps, representative of the ECOWAS Commission, the President of the ECOWAS Court and other court members here present, the Right Honorable Speaker of the ECOWAS Parliament, the Attorney General and other Attorneys General here present, Honorable Ministers here present, Minister of Trade and other ministers here present, judges of the Superior Courts of the Gambia, legal practitioners, ladies and gentlemen, all other protocols duly and respectfully observed. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I bring you greetings from His Excellency, the President Adama Barrow, and extend his apology for him not being able to be here with you because of other prior engagement. It is with immense gratitude that I welcome you to the Gambia. We are grateful to the Economic Community of West African States Court for selecting the Gambia to host this important international conference. The trust, the respect, and the confidence vested in us by ECOWAS is not lost on us. It is a symbol of our shared commitment, our shared aspirations, and our shared journey towards a future characterized by democracies and respect for the rule of law. The theme of this conference, ECOWAS Zero Tolerance for Unconstitutional Change of Government, is not merely a topic for discourse. It is a proclamation of our commitment, a testimony of our strength, and a call to action. This theme is a reminder of our shared vision for a West Africa region defined by strong democratic institutions, upheld by the rule of law and led by governments that respect and adhere to their constitutional mandates. In the Gambia, our history has been marked by periods of unconstitutional change of government. We have gone through a period of authoritarian rule that lasted 2 decades, marked by a deliberate disregard for democratic principles and violation of constitutional norms. As a country, we have seen the anguish, the pain, and the despair that emerge when constitutional order is disrespected. But we have also seen the dawn of a new era, an era of change, of hope, and of commitment to constitutional order. Through our struggles, we have learned the importance of democracy, not merely as a system of government, but as a philosophy, as a way of life. Democracy is about listening even when we disagree. It is about respecting the rule of law even when we don't understand it. It is about adhering to the Constitution even when it seems inconvenient. Democracy is about recognizing the dignity of every individual, respecting their rights, their freedom, and their voice. It requires a commitment to justice, to fairness, and to the principles of equality. And it demands that we work tirelessly to create a society where every voice is heard, every opinion is respected, and every right is protected. The experiences of the Gambia serve as a testament to the commitment of our people, to our capacity for change, and to our commitment to democratic principles. As we gather here today, let us remember our shared history, our shared struggles, and our shared victories. Let these memories guide us as we chart a course towards a future that is firmly rooted in respect for our Constitution, irrespective of the challenges that may come our way. Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, the ECOWAS stance of zero tolerance for unconstitutional change of government sends a clear message to every corner of our region that democracy is not just an option, but an absolute requirement. This commitment underscores our resolve to build nations that respect the will of the people, where every citizen has a voice and where that voice is valued. To realize this vision, education plays an instrumental role. Informed citizens form the bedrock of a strong democracy. Therefore, we must strive to empower our people with knowledge, promote constitutional literacy, and inspire civic engagement at all levels of society. When our citizens understand their rights and responsibilities as enshrined in our Constitution, they become active participants in the democratic process, contributing to the growth and development of our nations. Zero tolerance for unconstitutional changes in government should not just be a slogan. It should reflect in our actions, in our policies, and in our laws. It calls for strengthening our legal and institutional frameworks to guarantee the supremacy of our Constitution. We must ensure that every individual, irrespective of their position or status, is subject to the law and held accountable for their voices. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, let me inform you that under the leadership of His Excellency President Adama Barrow, the government is strong in its principle of separation of powers. And I'm sure the Chief Justice will confirm that President Barrow actually continues to strengthen the judiciary, make sure that it is independent and continues to enhance their capacity going forward. As we engage in the deliberations, remember that every decision we make and every policy we endorse ultimately saves the lives of the millions of people we represent. Let our discussions guide us towards a future marked by peace, unity, prosperity, and an unwavering commitment to constitutional order. In conclusion, let me reiterate the Gambia's commitment to the noble cause of ECOWAS zero tolerance for unconstitutional change of government. Our history, our experiences, and our aspirations echo this commitment. We are honored to serve as the venue for this important conversation, and we are confident that our collective efforts will lead to the strengthening of our democracies, the safeguarding of our constitutional order, and the advancement of our region. We hope that your stay in the Gambia will be an enriching experience filled with enlightening discussions, meaningful interactions, and memorable moments. Your Excellency, on that note, I gladly and with honor declare this conference open. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Excellency, the Vice President, for declaring this conference open. 2-3 messages of housekeeping. We will have group pictures after anthems, the high table with the Vice President with ECOWAS court judges, Vice President with Chief Justices, and Vice President with attorneys. It will happen in the lobby at the entrance. We'll have a coffee break, tea break, or breakfast, depending on our watches. This will be for 15 minutes, so we can quickly have our working session and close on time. Hostesses will direct you for a coffee break, tea break, or breakfast. That will happen in 2 different locations. On this note, with the authorization of His Excellency the Vice President, we'll call for ECOWAS anthems and Gambia anthems, and then move to group photographs. Anthems, please. Thank you. Hostesses, kindly come. Protocol officers, kindly direct the excellencies to the lobby for the group picture. I repeat, the Vice President with the high table, Vice President with judges of the court, Vice President with Chief Justices, Vice President with attorneys and deputy attorneys. Thank you. We have 20 minutes. We'll reconvene here. Okay, we'll reconvene here at 1 o'clock. 1 o'clock. We'll reconvene here at 1 o'clock, please. Thank you.